Today, I want to share with you a message I received from the Lord last night. And I'm sorry about this black beanie on my head. It's really cold here in Korea. I don't know where you're watching from, so I'm trying to keep myself warm. So just don't pay attention to all this, but listen to the word of the Lord that He gave to me last night. The Lord said to me while I was pacing and praying that my people are rejecting the message of the cross. My people are rejecting the message of the cross in exchange for comfort, compromise, and chaos. All right, let's look at some scriptures. And when he said that, I began to ponder and ask the Lord exactly what it means. What is the message of the cross? Paul says the message of the cross is power unto the believers. It's actually the power of God, but it's also a stumbling block for the Jews. And it's a laughing stock. It's foolishness to Gentiles. Means the message of the cross doesn't make sense at all. But when we embrace it by faith, as Jesus commanded his disciples to embrace the cross, that it's activated in our lives as power, although it looks foolish to the unbeliever and it's a stumbling block for the Jews. It's the power of God, the gospel of Jesus Christ. The core of it is the cross. Jesus told his disciples many times in Matthew, Luke, and in many different places. I'm just going to read a few of them. When he talked about the cross, he was speaking to his disciples. He was not speaking to the general public. He was speaking to his disciples. And he said in Matthew 10:38, I'm reading from the New King James Version. Matthew 10:38, he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. In fact, the verses above are harsher. Verse 36, a man's enemies will be their own household. If somebody opposes the gospel within the household or opposes the message of the cross, they will become enemies. So he said, he who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, not worthy to follow Jesus. He who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it. He who loses his life for my sake will find it. It's really a tough command. And people have a hard time understanding it, how God is so cruel that we have to love Jesus more than our father, mother, our daughter and sons, our family. It's not saying to hate our family. That goes against the whole Bible. But Jesus said, there are times when the cross that you choose will be opposed by your own family members, by your father, mother, children. When you want to obey the Lord, their benefit, their welfare will be a stumbling block for you. Oh, but they're going to suffer, or oh, I need to take care of them before I embrace the cross. There comes a point in your life when you're not ready, you're not carrying your cross every day, that when Jesus asks you to do something sacrificial, that's what cross is, isn't it? Denying your own desires, your own comfort, your own money, your own will, your own ways, then it's a struggle, because if you're not carrying it every day, then when you are coming to that point when Jesus asks for more of you, then the very people that you love, the very family that God gave you, the very gifts of children God has given you, can become an enemy of the cross. It's a very strong message. Christianity today, in the modern world, in the Western world, including Korea, is an easy gospel. Believe in the Lord, you'll be saved, you'll be delivered from hardship, oppression, depression. God will bless you, curse will be broken off, and you will live a happy life. That's part of the gospel. But most of the world who are living, most of the people who are living in this world live in a very harsh condition where gospel is opposed, where gospel believing people are persecuted, where they're tortured and killed, where their properties are confiscated, they're thrown out of their villages and homes. I've come from such places in India. I've lived there for 12 years. I know what hardship persecution looks like. There's nobody who defends you. There's no police, no government. You stand on your own as a Christian in most places in India. And it's changing, and it will change, but still, there's a lot of opposition in many of the states in India. So the message of the cross to them is you have to love the Lord, sometimes more than your own father, mother, and your children. It's a hard thing because when you embrace Jesus, the threat is not only against you, but it's against your family. And if you're not strong, if you're not embracing the cross, there comes a point, well, where you can't overcome that barrier of ultimate sacrifice. Jesus is asking you, as a disciple, as a follower. Let me read further. Matthew 16:24. If anyone desires to come after me, wants to follow Jesus, wants to be his disciple, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Denying himself. What does it really mean? Well, what does a cross mean? Cross is beautiful now for Christians. We hang up crosses everywhere, but they didn't do that back then when Jesus was talking about the cross. It was a sign of execution. It was a symbol of Roman cruelty, designed to make people die with excruciating pain for longer periods of time. They've devised this. They could just kill people with a spear or a sword, but they designed the cross so that the person who's hanging on the cross will suffer, sometimes weeks at a time. That's why when Jesus died, only after 6 hours, Pilate was surprised. He asked, oh, he died already? Because the crucifixion, the crux, the cross, in those days was a device that was designed to bring a lot of torment, suffering to the one that's hung on it. And Jesus went through that. That was the cross. There's no other example, signs, and symbols of the cross other than it's a suffering, it's self-sacrifice. Jesus didn't have to die, but he died as us, as sinners, became a curse on the cross. So when he says take up your cross, he's not taking about your little cross on your necklace or the cross on your church. He's not even talking about, oh, my wife is a cross, my husband is a cross, my children are a cross, my job is a cross. No. Those are your responsibilities. When he said cross, everybody understood in the Roman Empire, the cross only had one meaning. It was an execution tool. Jesus says, deny yourself and sacrifice yourself on the cross as he did for mankind. In fact, all the disciples, of course, Judas, hung himself, and John the Apostle lived for a long time, but a very difficult, hard time, hardships he had undergone. His last days were in the island Patmos, exiled because people tried to kill him and he wouldn't die. So they exiled him, and he died a very lonely, poor, hard, difficult life. And that was his cross. Because he chose the gospel. But 11 of the other disciples were actually executed. They were executed like Jesus, or some of them early in their lives, some of them later in their lives. Peter upside down. Am I saying that we all need to be executed? No, I am saying, of course, when you're in different places like North Korea, China, or some parts of India, some parts of persecuted countries who are against Christianity. Yeah, execution might be um, something that you can't deny. It's something that you need to prepare yourself for, especially in North Korea. If you believe in Jesus, execution is probably one of the kinder options for you instead of being tortured for years and years in a concentration camp. It's a harsh statement, but that's reality right now in North Korea and some parts of the world. But what I'm saying, when Jesus said, take up your cross, he said, deny yourself, deny your desires. In other translations, like the New Living Translation, I'm going to read to you. It has different meaning. It enlightens you more. It says, refuse. I'm sorry, this is Matthew 10:38 in New Living Translation. If you refuse to take up your cross and follow me, you are not worthy of being mine. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. If you give up your life, you find it. So cross symbolizes death, sacrifice that Jesus didn't have to go through, but he went through because he knew it was the will of God. And he did it for the love of mankind. Cross for you, what does cross for you represent? And what does denying yourself, what does losing your life and not clinging onto it mean? Sometimes we have to lose our comfort. Sometimes we have to lose our sleep. Sometimes we have to lose our food when we want to. The Lord is asking us to fast and pray. Sometimes we have to lose our money when the Lord asks us to give our money to others. It's a symbol of sacrifice, denying my desires. And out of love for the Lord, out of love for people, to willing to sacrifice, lay down my own valuable things, even my very life, for those that require it. I think those who go into mission field, every single one of them have already this on their checklist. You can't go to certain mission fields without saying, I'm willing to die for the Lord. It's not an easy decision, but it's a very noble decision. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to die when they go to mission field, but it's something that they need to lay it down. They need to deny their rights to life if they choose the message of the cross, knowing that it could be required of them. Their very lives could be required of them. Now, why is the Lord saying, I don't want to read Luke as well. Luke also has a different portrayal. Luke chapter 9:23. If any of you wants to be my follower, my disciple, wants to follow, you must give up your own way. That's what New Living Translation says, your own way. Insist your own way, the ways of the world, the ways of comfort, status, lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, of things that I have, positions, higher educations, my reputation. These are all the ways of the world, and sometimes our own ways, because we live in the world. We choose to think this will make us happy. We choose to think that is going to give, comfort, happiness to our families. But all of them actually is our ways. It's not only important to believe in Jesus, but it's also important to embrace his ways. And his ways is ultimately first, deny your ways and embrace his ways. And his ways is the cross. Willing to lay down your life, willing to deny yourself and lay down your life, means not to insist on your own will, the way you do things, to hold on to things, whether it's property, money, or people, but to lay it down before the Lord. It's not being ignorant, it's not being irresponsible, but it's surrendering to the Lordship of Jesus Christ, as Jesus surrendered his own life to the Father before he went to the cross. Let your will be done. Many people ask for the will of God, but how God accomplishes his will in your life may be different compared to your ways. His ways may be different. And it's important that we understand the will of God and also follow it through with his ways, not according to my ways. Was it the will of God to Abraham to have a child? Yeah. But did he wait for the will of God and surrender his will and his ways to him? No. He listened to his wife and they had Ishmael. And we, 2,000 years later, still have this problem with the Ishmaelites. So what is it? What is it that the will of man does that somehow counteracts with the will of God? It's not that they're willingly, rebelliously trying to oppose the will of God. It's insisting on your own ways. Do you know what happened in Egypt in front of Mount Sinai after the the Israelites were taken out of Egypt? Great signs and wonders, 10 plagues. Red Sea split open, walking on dry ground. The Egyptian army collapsed. They were victorious. They saw everything. They saw Moses go up the mountain. They were terrified of the dark clouds of the presence of God, where God came and literally came down on Mount Sinai with burning fire. And when Moses went up, people said, "Make us a God that we could worship." They were not rejecting the God of Israel, because their ways for hundreds of years was to worship an idol that they could see, they could touch, and they could give sacrifice to, as they did in the Egyptian way, in Egypt, according to the Egyptian way of idolatry. The Israelites weren't asking, "Oh, no, we want to reject this God who's right now on Mount Sinai, right in front of us. We want to reject this God who brought 10 plagues in Egypt and brought us through dry ground, through the Red Sea." That's not what they were saying. Don't misunderstand. Don't try to read the gospel backwards. Look into their situation. They were celebrating, but when Moses wanted, they wanted to worship God, because every human desires after God. Because their ways that they've been taught in Egypt was to make a precious idol made of pure gold. They were sacrificing their gold, their money, and make an idol so they could. This is how they worshipped in Egypt, in the Egyptian way. Many times we do this with God. We want to please him, we want to worship him, we want to sacrifice to him, we want to follow his will, but we insist on our ways to do it. And that's where everything gets messed up. So the first principle of following Christ is to deny yourself, deny your ways. Do not insist on your own ways. Proverbs 3:5 says, "Don't lean on your own understanding when you are with God. Lay down and surrender your ways, your life, even your very life. Deny yourself and carry your cross and follow him." Carry your cross, whatever God lays on you. It's not insisting your desires. It's not following the ways of the world. It's actually a very different path. It's a narrow path. It's a decision of self-sacrifice. It's the decision of self-denial. It's a wonderful path of holiness. It's a highway to heaven, but it's only achieved through the cross. The message of the cross today is not very popular, and the Lord said to me last night, "My people reject it." But that is the way of life. That is the narrow gate. Deny yourself if you want to follow Jesus, please him. If you want to live a full life, deny your own desires. It doesn't mean you will live poor, you will live, unhappy and sad. No. It means you will not insist on your own ways, which are many times coupled with traditions and cultures of this time, the secularism and the trends of this time. It's all messed up. We can't worship God with our own ways. That's why God said to Moses, "The people need to worship me exactly the way I want them to worship. This way, that way. This is how you sacrifice. This is what kind of animal you bring, what species, how many year old is it, how you cut it, what to sacrifice, what not to." There were specific ways that God gave Moses for the people to worship God and sacrifice. We don't need to sacrifice animals this day, but we do. In Romans 12, it does says We must offer our very lives, our bodies as a living sacrifice, which is pleasing and honorable, acceptable to the Lord. So I want to encourage you, what areas are you not willing to lay down? What area are you insisting your own ways? Is it your comfort? Is it your money? Is it your property? Is it your children? Is it your family? And these all are the blessings of God. But they cannot be a stumbling block for us choosing the cross. They always need to be on the altar of God. They always need to be surrendered to the Lord, that any time when He says to do something, we are not taken back and says, no, this is mine. No, I don't want to do that. That's not God's ways. God's ways must be done in God's time and God's wisdom. And when man's wisdom and man's ways are mixed together, then it becomes contaminated sacrifice, defiled sacrifice. I know this is not a very popular message, and this is also a message given to me as well as to our community and to whoever is that's listening who wants to follow Christ. The message of the cross is very simple. Deny yourself daily, your desires, your ways, and even your will, and ask the Lord what He wants and how He wants it done. And what are the crosses that we need to embrace. It's not natural for people to choose suffering. It's not natural to people to let go of their comfort or their properties or their money or their valuable time or even their position, reputation, or jobs. That's not natural. But the message of the cross, when it's embraced, it becomes a power of God. It becomes a power of God to choose righteousness, to follow Christ, to live like Jesus, and not be attached to the things of this world. The Word of God says things of this world, no matter how valuable, spectacular, wonderful they seem, will pass. All the things of this world will pass. The only thing that will stand is the Word of God that you embrace in your life, that you practice, apply to your life. Today, the Lord is saying, deny yourself and carry your cross and follow Him. The way of life, the way to heaven. God bless you. Shalom.